Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Simply Complex YouTube channel. We are making zero-touch nodes. That's right, zero touch. Alright, if you're unfamiliar with what we're doing, why don't you go ahead and cruise on over to simplycomplex.org. Go over to the Vodcast YouTube channel, you can see what we're doing. We're making zero-touch lessons. Episode 101, episode 102, episode 103, and today we're going to be doing episode 104. In episode 101, we created a Dynamo node. Episode 102, we created a Dynamo line. Episode 103, we created a center point from an input line. I thought it'd be fun today to actually combine what we did in episode 102 and 103 to show how to create a line, get its center point, and send both of them out in the same node, two separate input ports, because it can start to get a little tricky when you deal with more than one output port. Okay, is everyone ready? We're going to start to be entering some uncharted territory here, something that is a bit different, but a lot of fun, and is ultimately necessary in certain cases. So just to prep everyone on what we're going to do, let's go ahead and find our current node right here. This is 101, episode 101, 102, 103. Alright, so all the nodes we've created thus far all have one output port. And the name of the output port is the type of the object we're sending out. Okay, we do have the ability to custom name that. And that's what we're going to do today, as well as make out multiple. So we're going to combine these two to make it, to always make it a center point, a line and a center point as output ports. All right, let's figure out what we're going to do that. But we are going to keep all the original. All right, so how do we do that? Well, we already have most of the code here, so I'm not going to go over it, but I am going to go ahead and make a new, method. Okay, so let's go ahead and we should be getting experts at making methods now. So public static, what are we going to put for output? Now, if you think about it, we have two output ports. One's going to be a line, one's going to be a point. So we can't type line, comma, point here. We can't do that and then say D line center and then do our input ports, which would be basically, what do we want to do for input ports? I guess we would do points. So we'd say point, space, start point, comma, point. Now, if you're asking what am I doing and you're not familiar with it, push pause right now, head all the way back over to episode 101. Watch that, 102, 103, 104. Those are prerequisites for what we're doing today. All right, so end point. These are our input ports. All right, now what is funny is we can wrap this in a transaction. Here is where things get a little funny. It is almost a limitation within C#. Well, let's back up. First of all, what we put as the type, which is the start of our method, in zero touch, you always define what the type is for your output port single. What if you have output ports plural? You need to do something different, which is basically a limitation of C#, which is it's always expecting one output. So if you expect multiple outputs, then you need to really create like a list. It's not called a list. It's actually called a dictionary. You need to create a dictionary type because that holds actually a string and then what they call an object. And it's going to be familiar. It's going to be clear when we get into it. All right, so our type is going to, all right, we're going to make a line. Let's do this quickly. And it's going to be called, D line 2. We got to call it something different, 2. Okay, and then our D line, 2 is going to be equal to our line dot, and we always want to do our constructor, our start endpoint, and then basically that's going to be start point, comma, end point. Okay, these are coming in as input ports. That checks out. Okay, that will create the line. Now we want to find the center point of that. Okay, so we want to actually, there's a few ways we can do this. I like to break everything down. So we do want to create a point, and we want to say center point 2. I'm making 2 because I do not want to bump into anything that we've done in the previous methods, because it can get a little messy if you start to name it with the same name. And then we say, let's say center point 2 is going to be equal now to, now we don't have an input line coming in like we did here in lesson 103. We actually have the line already, which is called D2 line. So we can say D2 line, D line 2. D line 2 is already this thing, and it's going to be created. So now all we have to do is place dot, and it'll actually give us all of the methods and properties that are available to the curve or the line that was in this previous 103 method. All right, so we want to do point at parameter. There we go. Pretty simple. And remember, we want to use the actual midpoint value, and we want to close it off with a semicolon. Oh, I already know a problem here. It says plane at parameter. Oh boy, that needs to be point at parameter. Point at parameter. There we go. Boom. Okay, that looks a little better. It's still complaining because we're trying to return something. Now this is where it's going to actually get a little different. Because we can't just simply say return what? Dictionary? We can't just return the dictionary because it doesn't know what to return. But it's in the same type of... We can't just say return center point, I suppose, because it'll only be sending out one thing. And we can't just say return line, comma, center point. We can't do that either. Because we actually need to return the dictionary inputs. But the problem is we can't even return a dictionary because we haven't even created one. Object to create a dictionary, and then we fill the dictionary with our what we want to send out to the output ports, then we return it. Okay, so this is how it's done. Let's call our dictionary out multi output port, maybe multi output port. Okay, that'll work. Multi output port. Let's call it multi output port. Now, if you remember, this is how you define a dictionary type. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that, and I'll put it right back here. I know it's kind of different, but we've only been dealing with single objects. Now when you start to deal with collections and whatnot, the types get a little more complicated to define. But that's basically what you do. You say, okay, this is a dictionary type, my multi-output port. Okay, so then all you say is multi-output port is basically going to be equal to, and now you got to create a new dictionary. So you say new, and you say dictionary, and then you say string object. Now, if you look here, you need to define what that is. Let me see. Okay, so basically you need to make a bunch of lists. So those have to be enclosed in curly braces. So you say, basically, now how to explain this? Basically, what you do now is you define a string and you define a key. So in this case, we would say for the line one, we start with that one first. So basically we can do like this. We can say in quotes line, and then we would say comma, and then we'd say D line 2. Okay, that would be the first entry in the dictionary. And then you just make another one. You say quotes. Now, if there's a lot of these, there's probably a way to do this programmatically. Point, and then you say comma, and then you say this would be our center point 2. Whoops, center point. Oh. Center point. How come it's not doing our intelligent typing? There you go, center point 2. Let's see, I gotta make this a comma, and then let's see, statement. Okay, that's looking good. And then this is one whole statement, so I've got to make that, finish that in a semicolon. Okay, and then now I can return it. Return, and then I just got to say return. What do I return? I return the entire dictionary, but the dictionary is actually called multi-output port. So that's what I return. Okay, I'm not quite done. We have returned the dictionary, which means we now have returned both the line, as you can see here, and the point, the center point. The line and the center point. That gives us the ability to return multiple things through one method. There is something else we need to add, because basically if we do this and we don't do anything else, then it will send multiple items to the output port, but the output port will not be giving it proper name or organization. So there's a tag that we need to use in ZeroTouch to tell ZeroTouch, hey, you better use this dictionary and better name the nodes appropriately. And that tag is basically, I'm not 100% sure. We should probably find out about through the developers how this kind of works, because I'm not 100% sure, other than you need to add it once and it's always the same. So then it works like this. You kind of say multi-return new. Let's see, it's got square brackets on each side. And then let's see, it's got curly braces. And then in here, you basically define the name of the output ports. So we'll say line is one of them. And then the other one is called point. Yeah, I think that's right. Okay, that looks good. Let's build a solution. So you can just copy this whole thing and then use it again and again. Now, what we probably want to do now that we have the opportunity is not just call the output ports line and point, but we can be a little bit more specific now. We can call the output ports now line, and I suppose let's call this center point, but then we have to make sure we change it here to center point. Okay, I think that looks good. That looks good there. Let's go ahead and hit build solution. We can call this one line. Suppose that's okay. Okay, let's see how that would work in Dynamo. All right, and we're going to see how it looks inside of Dynamo. We open up our ZeroTouch node and Dynamo geometry, and it's right here. And we will make sure to see you next time. Thank you.